today's Rice Report, I am joined by Mike from Rethinking the Dollar. And Mike has been on my channel before, and I've been on Mike's channel, and I'm going to include links down below so you can check out those previous episodes. But I invited Mike to come on today and talk a little bit about what's been happening on the economic front as far as this financial crisis that we are experiencing the year of 2020. So, Mike, I appreciate you coming on the show again today, man. How you doing?
I am doing good, Rice. I appreciate you for reaching out to me again, and definitely looking forward to trying to navigate and steer these waters, man, these choppy waters we're in, because I believe that this next decade is going to be like something we've never imagined. So definitely excited to be back and to connect with you again. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, man. And you're definitely a person that I look up to as far as your perspective when it comes to economics and things like this, which is the reason why I wanted to bring you back on. And I'm going to be trying to I'm doing discussions with a multitude of people just to bring different perspectives so that people can, kind of get a different idea from different people about what they're thinking is happening all around the world, but especially here in the United States, so that people can make better educated choices and decisions on like what they need to do to prepare themselves for it. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate those kind words, my friend, and definitely, I'm a fellow patriot that's concerned about the direction of our country. Nevertheless, the monetary system, health system, political system, you name it. So that's kind of, what drives me these days, trying to reach as many people as possible. So I appreciate those words and you having me on your show once again. Thanks.
No problem, man. No problem. And so, we're both in agreement that in 2008, when we experienced our crash that we had, that really the system was just kind of put on life support, and everything was just basically zombies. The banking institutions, and that problem we knew was going to come to its head, and we knew that there was going to be a financial crash or a crisis of some sort. We definitely, a lot of people who study economics have been saying this stuff for quite some time, especially since 2008, after all the quantitative easing. And so last year we started seeing kind of a little bit of that kind of surfacing with the inverted yield curve, and then the repo markets, what was going on with the repo markets. So we already knew the direction, and we knew that we were kind of getting faster to that point of crisis. And then we go into 2020, and then we have this situation that happens. We have a virus, and this virus is now being used as a scapegoat for all the economic problems that we've been having, as if they never existed prior to the virus coming into our lives. And with all that being said, now we've got almost like QE infinity going on, multiple stimuluses or stimuli. I don't know how you would say that. The PPP, special purpose vehicles, record number unemployment, all-time highs in traditional markets at the same time of record number of unemployment, which seems like an oxymoron. So yeah, I'd really just like to get your overall thoughts on what's happened based off what I just said, and where you think that we're kind of headed in the short term and then long term.
Okay, well, once again, Rice, you pretty much summarized it right there with everything we're facing. But I think on the bigger picture, the macro side of things, it all has to do with the great reset or restructuring. And so on the short term, I think everything you've mentioned is more so the introduction of what meaning those is orchestrating this whole global shift of power, is using as a catalyst to bring about all their long-term agendas, and they have to do it slowly. And so what we're experiencing now is just a slow, progressive, ultimately wealth transfer from those that have been the backbone of this great country that we've lived in, which happens to be the working class. And so are the things you mentioned, the ones that suffer the most happen to be those that fall within that working class pay range from, as they say, the majority of the unemployed happen to be those that make under a certain threshold, but then you have all the white collar workers which fall in that middle tier, which are experiencing the most change. Right, correct. The middle class, they're experiencing the most change because of the shift on many fronts from how we will work moving forward. They're redefining work. They're redefining what we consider our currency, with all of these special things that they're doing amongst the Treasury and the Federal Reserve, collaborating for the first time ever in 100 years or so to this magnitude. And then you have also on a political front, we have basically a left-right war going on, all surrounding this current presidential cycle, which depending on how things play out, could be the last of the republic that we've known, because I think a part of that in the long run is a restructuring of how the political landscape looks in this country. So in the short term, everything you've mentioned, from the health scare that we've all been introduced to, is a social experiment to see who is cooperative and who will be considered dissidents that they may have to deal with in the future. And then you have the economic front of all that additional stimulus and all those special vehicles that they've created that is a way to help siphon some of the wealth from those that have worked extremely hard and prop up the 1% class and to shift things around. So in the short term, everything we're experiencing now is just an introduction for the long term, because I think it's a 10-year plan ultimately, but yet we're just within what looks like 120 days of it. So there's a lot more surprises to come, put it like that.
Okay, well, before we go long term, what I'd like to get your thoughts on is in this short term that we're dealing with now, how long are they going to be able to continue to prop these markets up, keep printing up money? Because I think some of this is going to like come to its head on a short term. And I've gotten varying opinions where some people feel like that they could essentially just be printing their way out of this for quite some time and just constantly reevaluating the money, like you would see like in Venezuela or Zimbabwe, where the large bills buy something very small, like it's like $1 trillion bill buys like something very minuscule in Zimbabwe.
Right. And I really don't think those notes are even in circulation, because I have a couple here and they're more so collector's items or reminders of what happens when, fiat currencies return to their intrinsic value. But yet on a short term, I'm of the mindset that, this current experiment that we're under now, as far as a central bank constructed monetary system based upon the extension of credit and issuance of debt through in the personal private sector, the government sector, you name it, I still think they have a lot of life left, man. Like, Jerome Powell has made it clear that, they haven't really even tapped into the full capacity of their toolkit. And so with words like that, lets me know that they are capable of throwing out some things that we have yet to be able to even comprehend. And so the obvious is that we talk about, they're talking about trying to control the yield curve on the long end of things, which is ultimately a form of negative rates. And then also we're talking about the Fed funds rates. We have a president that's just calling for negative rates. So that's stuff that we are kind of been told about. And that right there could all transpire within the next year or two, which could buy them time on top of whatever surprises might come along. But I think my personal opinion is that with the creation of, I think, a total now of 11 emergency facilities, as they're called, or special purpose vehicles, and all those acronyms from MCC, PPP, all those things they put out there. I think that those avenues there, and especially as I do more research into that, they were set up as a partnership with the Treasury and the Fed under some type of LLC that allows them to use treasuries, i.e. the future taxpayer funds, as a way of offering collateral for losses. And so I think that those windows there are just the opening for what they're going to do in the future. Okay. And so they fronted or provided an excess amount of liquidity to prop things up in the last 90 days or so. And now we're seeing the Fed's balance sheet go down a little bit, and stuff is starting to die down a little bit. So I think the goal was to provide more than was initially needed to buy them time, which could probably get them through the rest of this year, heading into the next year, anticipating that second wave and all those other things. So I think they overcompensated for this initial bursting of the piping system to buy them time for future injections through those same windows, which can then, go through the.
No, it's very well quite possible. But now, I've mentioned this before the last time we talked, and I definitely, since it's been a couple months and we both have had time to look into different things, and maybe some of our perspectives have changed. When you mention things about the Federal Reserve and the Treasury working together for the first time ever, there's a lot of people that, and this, this really comes a lot from like the QAnon camp, but that is a very large group of people. There's a lot of people, even if they're silent about believing in what Q's about. And a lot of the Q talk is that the Federal Reserve has been put into the Treasury, and then that just part of the Treasury is now part of the United States government, and that technically Donald Trump would be the chairman of the Fed.
Right.
And I know that right now that the Federal Reserve is directly reporting to Steve Mnuchin, who's the head of the Treasury. So do you think it's possible that maybe that they're trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve and maybe go back to like a sound money principle and backing by gold, silver, maybe even a multitude of precious metals? And would that get us out of the situation that we're in?
Ah, man, great question, great thoughts there. And so I would like to say that I believe that is something that is happening behind the scenes based upon what we've been shown. But problem with that is that I usually would look at things on the surface and then also look at the complete opposite of what that really could signal. And so knowing that the Federal Reserve has been in existence now for 107 years or how many ever years, I don't doubt that they are trying to rebrand, restructure that entity, because it's the leading central bank of all central banks. And so whatever happens here will probably reflect in every other country around the world. And so what I'm more than confident is being rolled out is the central bank digital currency type of thing. I don't believe that the powers that be, those that orchestrate the too big to fail banks, all those that's intertwined in this current paradigm, want to go backwards in the form of offering the public, prior history of the importance of preserving purchasing power through things outside of what they can control and manipulate outright. So gold, silver, all that stuff like that, I believe on a personal note, that is the best insurance policy you can take out against your national currency. But I don't see governments or, President Trump, even though I know he's a gold bug, he's also a debt lover. And so he would like to be able to borrow and continue to keep his empire going through the fractional reserve model as well. So I don't see him restricting his own ability to borrow and to, reap the benefits of a fractional reserve system. So I think what's coming will happen to be digital in nature, because if you just look at history, physical to paper to claims on paper to digits, and now solely digits as this coin shortage is, becoming mainstream subject matter. Now everybody's seeing signs everywhere.
Yeah, that is crazy, is it not?
Yeah.
Like
that has to be a part of a greater plan. And then, of course, would you be surprised if cash all of a sudden there's just issues with cash within the next couple of months as they get ready to roll out the UBI program stuff? So I would like to have hope. And so, I'm sorry, I would like to have hope in saying that this is all a part, the good guy, bad guy, the good guys are winning behind the scenes. But yet, once again, until I see some arrests and see some indictments and see some true signs of equality or justice being done from the to the orchestrators of this mess we're in, I don't really follow the QAnon thing, even though I'm 100% wrong.
Right. No, I'm in a complete agreement with you. I'm definitely a wishful thinker in this situation, and I'm hoping that this is like what is actually transpiring, because I don't want us to kind of live in this 1984 world that we're going in the direction of. And right. So yeah, but I am, losing patience as well. And, technically when it comes to the things that we're speaking about with the elections being right around the corner, I think that, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen within the next few months or there's just no point in talking about it no more, because, it feels like just smoke is being blown up my butt. And I really don't like that when I don't want it. So,
yeah. Now, I said, as far as something happening in the next couple of months, I'm of the mind frame that, definitely in this fall, there will be some type of event. I don't know what. And I think it will all depend upon how this paradigm of the left and right, Trump running for re-election, the Joe Biden situation, now entering this Kanye West situation. So all these
Brock Pierce too. I don't know if you heard about that.
Say that again?
Brock Pierce. You know who he is?
The EOS guy.
Yeah, he's put a run in for presidency as well.
So once again, outside of just the illusion of choice, what choice do we really have? Like, are any of these people individuals that can really, truly make a difference for future generations? Because right now, everything not me, but everything majority of people are concerned with happen to be their current level of comforts and the norm that we are used to having. When it comes to being able to wake up, enjoy your day, work hard, save, invest, do all the things we've been told is the American dream. All that stuff has ended, unfortunately. So now it's a matter of, as I mentioned before, we went live about how to how to create your own next decade, because we're going to be throwing a lot of curveballs. And you just referenced, possibly losing patience. And one of the biggest assets I think we're going to have is patience coming forward, because patience and hope is pretty much all we can really look forward to these days. So I'm in the same camp of having to remind myself of, continue to fight, man, continue to fight the fight, and, just reach out and educate people. So that's
well, I'm a freedom fighter, man. So, I mean, but the QAnon thing, it started late 2017. A lot of these things correlate to seeming like they would take place before a re-election takes place. That's where my impatience is coming in. Normally, I've been very fortunate that I've been forced to have to learn patience throughout my life. So, but when I can be impatient, I choose to be, because it helps me to be more patient in other things. Really quickly, like if they're able to keep propping up this market by printing up money, essentially what I see happening with that is the stock market just keeps going up, and everything just can't keep going up. So, I mean, like, how do you think that's going to play out? Like, the stock market's continuing to hit all-time highs while we have everything else going on and the things that we think that are coming.
Right.
So because I mean, we see the dollar thing, we see the shortage, we see the dirty money, we don't want cash. They've been pushing the idea of cashless societies for quite some time.
Right.
It's just now with everything going on, it makes it perfect for them. And then I definitely want to get into the digital dollar and talk specifically about that, but I'd like to get your thoughts on how much they can keep propping up these markets.
Great question. So my personal opinion,
should we all get on the ride? Should we start like taking advantage, because we know it's all going to go up?
That's where and I mentioned this all on my show, is that, people would ask me my thoughts on certain things in certain markets and certain entities, because right now I'm hearing a lot about mining stocks and whatnot. And so definitely those are derivatives of the actual true money themselves, gold and silver and copper and everything else. So they will do well. But as long as the spigot is on, that spigot will cause all the, i.e. favorable assets to rise. And so I would imagine equities markets will go to even greater highs than ever imaginable. But one thing I tell people, that it's all denominated in a currency that's coming towards its end. And this is where I try to get very, very specific on my words and saying that the Federal Reserve note, and I preface this by saying all dollars are not created equal. And so we use the word dollar very generally, because that's what we've known as and what we use as our national currency. But actually, it's a Federal Reserve note, i.e. a liability between the federal government and the central bank, our central bank. And so it's what we've used for legal tender purposes. But there's a lot of alternatives brewing up nowadays. And so rise crypto. So there's all types of alternatives that people are getting into outside of gold and silver. So my personal opinion is that unless you know how to trade these markets, I consider investing ultimately dead. Like, I don't really consider, what's going on with Robinhood to be investing. I think, it's literally gambling, or we're being told a narrative that it's young kids out here trying to take stimulus checks and turn them 10 times over. Or it could be another vehicle that the Federal Reserve is using through another LLC of theirs to prop things up, to make it look like there's activity in the market. We have a new investing class of young millennials getting in now. So we're being fed a lot of hot air. But as long as the spigot is on, expect everything that's already overly inflated to continue to rise until it cannot anymore. And that's what's the final pin that pricks the ultimate bubbles that we're experiencing? I don't know. But yet I think a lot of that will come to fruition as we move further into this political cycle, because I'd imagine if Trump is the true disruptor that he ran upon and make America great and all the things that he's done, good and bad behind the scenes, if he's the real deal, then I would imagine that they will not let the markets go past his this presidential election, because they don't want any type of chance of him taking credit for that. So between now and then, there's going to be something happening. But I think they're going to turn the spigot up even higher with those toolkits. So it's gambling nowadays, man. I'm very leery of it. I try to minimize my risk as much as possible.
That's smart, dude. That's smart. And I mean, that's great perspective. And I appreciate you sharing, because I'm sure a lot of people will find value in what you just said. And the last thing that I wanted to kind of focus on is the digital dollar that we talked about. Now, we kind of touched on it the first time me and you talked, and I'm not sure if we talked about it on your channel or not, but there was two different House bills that were being introduced that had digital dollar involved in it. So it's not quite there yet, but it's been already introduced in our government system. It's been put out to the media. The seed has been planted. So I mean, we're definitely going in this direction. And the one thing that I want to let people know about this is right now, I mean, a lot of our monetary system is electronic, and it's just digits on a screen, because there's not as many bills out there as there are digits on a screen.
Right.
But because we have cash, we have options to have a little bit of privacy.
Right.
When we're using credit cards and using checks, or using our bank account, or using Google Pay or things like that, you're not having any sort of privacy in what you're doing. Your information is sold and collected.
Right.
So now you got a situation where they're talking about, like we mentioned, the possibility of ending cash, shortage of coins. We're running out of money. Because you keep putting money on the screen, and it makes sense. And now we're headed towards a digital dollar, which absolutely zero privacy. You have, you have no privacy in anything that you do that involves spending money. And I don't think people realize quite yet how important that is. And unfortunately, it's going to be one of those things that I think is just going to be too late at that point. And the alternative to that, I think, is where you're going to have something like Bitcoin, like your decentralized cryptocurrencies, come into play. Because at least I can choose ways of having a little bit more anonymity. I'd rather be pseudo anonymous than completely traced and tracked and have no privacy. At least pseudo anonymity gives me a layer, some sort of layer of protection. And if you know enough about cryptocurrencies, there's a lot of different things that you can do to change that whole element up. You can use shufflers and mixers and mix up your Bitcoins, and they're not the original Bitcoin that you had. So it's not as quite, it changes the game, and things like that, I think, are going to be attacked, and they're going to try to make sure that people can't use those things. But I think that once we go that route, people are going to start waking up more too. So I mean, I definitely would like to get your overall thoughts about what you think about the digital dollar and how soon you think we might see it.
Okay. So my personal opinion is that the digital dollar ultimately is just a rebranding of our current monetary structure. I don't think it's necessarily about the digital dollar as it's being labeled. You mentioned those acts. We got I think the Heroes Act and the Boost Act, which refer to the digital dollar specifically, and then there's projects off of that or whatever. And so outside of them sowing seeds of what they would like to usher us into, I think it's more so just the payment structure and how they will like to basically use technology to their advantage and keeping us still locked in step in their paradigm of a centrally controlled system. And so ultimately, it's digital dollar is just a name for what we already currently have. As you referenced, 98% of activity done in the financial realm is already in digital form anyway. So I think it's just more so a rebranding, and it will be hard to sell it unless they had some other things out there that resembled the nature of going solely digital, which happens to be the cryptocurrency space, as well as all the other new and exciting opportunities of earning interest and things like that with the DeFi, CeFi, and all those things out there as well. So that's a good way of getting people groomed to the idea of, using your phone as opposed to having to go down to a brick and mortar store, because all those things are coming to an end anyway. But then again, at the end of the day, it's going to be about them being able to actually have more access into your life and provide you less options on how you can maneuver in this world that's going to be even more interconnected as everything becomes smart and 5G goes up and we're all constantly going to be online. That's the ultimate goal. And so to me, that's the ultimate form of slavery. When you are literally, they can see everything, know everything, and hear everything you do. Who are you? What do you have after that? So
and I thought we were slaves already to this debt-based system, but then you take away cash and you make it electronic. It just it's game over. I wanted to share something with you. Somebody had sent me an article the other day that I found to be really interesting. Bear with me. It has to do with Ethereum. and a new ERC token that was created. It's very interesting though. It's like an ERC 1404, and it's SEC compliant. It might even have something to do with the SEC. May have some involvement with this actual project. I'm trying to find this email so I can pull it up.
Yeah, just throwing out all those regulatory bodies right there lets me, makes me raise an eyebrow. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, wait till I read this though. I'm serious. This is, and I'll send you a copy of the article and I'll link it down below. And also, if people aren't familiar with Mike and his channel, Rethinking a Dollar, I'll have links down below for that. My appearance on his channel. I definitely encourage you guys to make sure you subscribe to his channel.
Yeah,
but this is
gotta get you back on as well.
A new type of SEC regulated crypto fund just launched. It's called ARCA, ARCA, is the first SEC regulated crypto fund that's represented by its own crypto token. And it says here that the token takes the form of an ERC 1404, and it's an Ethereum token specifically designed to be compliant with regulators. Now, here's the part that I really don't like. The tokens take the form of an ERC 1404, an Ethereum token specifically designed to be compliant with regulators. And unlike the common ERC 20 standard, ERC 1404s can be frozen and the transaction rejected or approved only for certain addresses. So with that being said, and we think of the idea that the Howey test, Ethereum technically failed the Howey test, but I'm thinking that the SEC is like, well, there's been enough time since the ICO and the project is decentralized. So because of that, we're not going to consider it a security. And they may give that leniency to some projects. If you got a few years to get your stuff completely decentralized, that's quite a possibility. But with Ethereum definitely being stated, just like Bitcoin, that neither are securities, and that they were able to do something like this, it's very possible that you could see the government using this ERC 1404 technology for their digital dollar, where they can freeze it, where they can prevent you from using it and things like that. It would make sense if they're trying to have something that they're having control over.
Right. And so I've had a chance of watching, I think it was 2 of the financial committee hearings on digital dollar, as well as the usher into their package and all that is like, how can we get stimulus? How can we get relief to people faster? We got to be able to directly inject it. Okay. So as a part of that. And so with that same approach of being able to have quicker and easier access into the unbanked lives, it will only be not ultimately common sense, but it will ultimately lead to projects such as what you just listed or mentioned, is that once they have complete access, everyone's connected. Then at that point, now we have to start weeding out the bad actors, those that are not in compliance, those that have, they don't follow lock, key, and step with what we want to usher out there. And then don't factor in the social credit score aspect. That we'll probably go into that as well. If your credit rating will be in there, your health information. So yeah, we all the things that we were being introduced to is nothing new. I think as of now, the experiments are taking place in other countries to see how it works out. But then ultimately, within that long 10-year window that I was referring to in the very beginning, is what it will probably take to roll it out to where, if you factor in, a rocky economy for the next couple of months and years, over time, people become desperate and willing to accept and stop fighting if it becomes the new norm.
Right.
And so everything we've experienced last 120 days is the introduction for what their long-term game plan. So now it's just a matter of, do people continue to, buy into it, or do we continue to put up a fight and voice our opinions and try to buy us some more time? But my personal opinion is we're going that way anyway. I just want to, enjoy whatever I can now, and hopefully have my kids grow up in a better environment than it looks like they're heading in right now. So
I feel you, dude. And those are definitely wise words, man. And that was powerful.
Appreciate it, my friend.
We're definitely in some interesting times, and obviously I want to continue doing conversations like this with you, and something I want to try to do a little bit more frequently too is start to roundtable these things and bring in 3 to 4 people, 3 to 5 people, and just pick apart something or just kind of get everybody's thoughts on like what's currently going on. Cause I think that the more people you have to add multiple perspectives with that dialogue, you're showing people how people can interact that may agree to disagree and still be civil about it. Cause I think that's been a problem. And just the fact that I think people can learn from the dialogue. And I think there's a lot of value in things like that.
Right.
So
I agree. You can easily pick up a couple nuggets in a larger group, because everybody drops gems in their own regards. Now it's just a matter of people taking them and using them and hopefully applying them. So definitely, I do enjoy that format as well. So I've done that a couple of times on my channel, and so I'm now at the point where I'm trying to get more solutions and more things that people can, actionable steps people can take. That's what I'm trying to get to now. So it's not easy, man, but I'm trying to figure it out myself. So if you got any ideas, let me know.
I definitely will, man. I definitely will. And dude, I really appreciate your time. If you can just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to wrap things up here and then I'll talk to you real quick. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have links down below for everything we talked about in today's episode. And I definitely encourage you to make sure you're checking out Mike's channel, Rethinking the Dollar. If this happens to be your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to explore my channel. And if you like what I'm doing, you can support me by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. I do encourage you to check out my Patreon channel where you can support me directly and I post up exclusive content. And as always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.